top spots in his administration. Trump has chosen Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary. He's a Wall Street billionaire who's an advocate for deficit reduction and deregulation. He has also supported extending Trump's 2017 tax cuts. Trump named...
Now there's a rub. We got a $36 trillion national debt.
Yeah.
And if you extend those tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, that's only going to cause the deficit to spike. So, again, there's a challenge there. They're going to have to figure out if he holds both of those as being important.
Yeah,
that's going to be a huge challenge. Well, I don't think he can get there with a $36 trillion debt, but we'll see.
Also, Trump named Brooke Rollins to lead the Department of Agriculture. Rollins is a conservative lawyer who served as domestic policy chief during Trump's first term. After leaving the White House, she became president and CEO of the America First Policy Institute, a group that helped lay the groundwork for a second Trump administration. Former pro football player Scott Turner is Trump's pick for HUD secretary. Turner ran the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council during Trump's first term. He also is involved with the America First Policy Institute. Trump's choice for labor secretary is Republican Congresswoman Lori Chavez Derrimer of Oregon. She's a staunch union ally and one of only a few House Republicans to support major pro-union legislation. The president-elect also named Russell Voigt, who was co-author of the Project 2025, to lead the Office of Management and Budget. It's a role he held during Trump's first term. Vaught also advocated for the president to have greater control over government agencies such as the FCC and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Trump selected former Republican Congressman Dave Weldon of Florida to lead the CDC. Weldon is a medical doctor who has been critical of the agency and its vaccination program. He has also pushed a long-debunked claim that a preservative used in some vaccines is linked to autism.
We have a lot to talk about here. First of all, I went to Congress with Dave, known Dave for a long time. But I want to talk first of all, and then we're going to talk about, this is not an ideologically pure cabinet by any stretch of the imagination. Michael Beschloss yesterday told the Times one of the more ideologically, if you want to call it diverse and consistent, whatever you want to call it, Vaughn, we're going to let somebody much smarter than me figured out the best way to describe it. I want to talk, though, about one pick that conservatives are really angry about, and that is the labor secretary pick. First of all, why are they angry? Secondly, why did he select somebody that the base would be so upset about? Was it like a payback to the Teamsters? What was it?
I think that's a good question, because during the campaign, right, he went up to Michigan and he campaigned this idea of pro, not necessarily union, but pro-worker. And this is where Democrats had a field day. They said, well, he's not actually at union shops. Fast forward. Right. And suddenly he's picking a labor secretary from the Pacific Northwest, the former congresswoman, who has been much more defensive of labor unions, teachers unions, somebody who turned a lot of heads.
By the way, even after he did very well with the union voters.
Correct, right? Absolutely. Yeah. And now this is an affront. Again, this is the reposturing of today's Republican Party, that Donald Trump can face the criticism from some on the right, but it's his party now, and this labor secretary, there's no reason to believe that she's not going to pass with Democratic support.
And Michael Beschloss, that's the thing. And the New York Times, in the article where they quoted you, just basically said, hey, this is not a conservative Republican Party. This is not a moderate Republican Party. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. It is what he says it is. And you were quoted in there talking about how these picks, you cannot line them up ideologically. Talk about it.
Well, they're not robots. Everything Donald Trump led us to believe during the campaign was that he wanted to be a strong president and a successful president. And a lot of that rhetoric suggested that he would have almost, identical robots in the cabinet and among his aides. But if you look at history, what is the lesson of history? The lesson of history is strong and successful presidents, almost every single one, they have people in their entourage, cabinet, and in their White House who argue with one another. Do that in front of the president. Tell him what he doesn't want to hear. And the essential quality here is a president who listens to all that. Classic example in history was George Washington, who you would think did not need any advice at all. His Secretary of the Treasury was Hamilton. Secretary of State was Jefferson. They argued with each other all the time about things like the size of government, how you finance it. George Washington benefited. In modern times, you know this case particularly, Joe. Under Ronald Reagan, George Shultz and Cap Weinberger argued about, is Gorbachev serious? What should we do about the Cold War? Should we increase defense spending or lower it? Reagan hated the conflict, but he learned from it. It made him a stronger president.
And Jim Vandehei, Axios, wrote a similar, you and Mike Allen wrote a similar article this past weekend talking about how it is hard to see a through line with a lot of these picks. Some of them very, very right wing. The labor secretary, left of center, and most conservatives would say very left wing. Then you've got RFK Jr. that is just all over the place ideologically, and several other picks that are just sort of random and all over the place.
Because it's a very different Republican Party. It's not a conservative party anymore. It is, as you said, the Donald Trump party. He sees a real, I think, opportunity to continue to grow the party. A big part of that is working class voters. Whether or not he agrees with everybody on the specifics of the union debate, he went with somebody who traditional conservatives would hate. This person would never make it into a George W. Bush cabinet per se, but under a Trump world, they will. And he doesn't care if people don't like any of these picks. He doesn't care if you don't like their personality, their background. I think he, unlike most people, enjoys conflict. In fact, I think he often incites conflict. He loves it to play out in front of him, so he can ultimately be the decider. It keeps him being unpredictable, which he likes, and he thinks that gives him a stronger governing hand. And so there'll be all kinds of conflict. There will be both publicly and privately. That is kind of the nature of the Trump operation.
All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I think that's right. First of all, Trump in his first term really almost enjoyed the fight around him at the Oval Office. He'd bring in aides around the desk and have them pit one against each other. Now, some of that was for simply West Wing jockeying, who was up, who was down, but that's what he would make a decision from. He'd hear people and then decide. Often the last voice he heard would be the one that would carry the day. But here with the union pick, this is him trying to remake the party. This is him trying to bring in more of those working class voters, union voters. He spent a lot of time courting that vote in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, other places this time around, and was able to have not just the benefit of union votes, but a couple of major unions did not offer endorsements, which was seen as sort of a tacit victory for him at the time. This is sort of paying off here. And we have seen some extreme right-wing picks and other very conventional ones. His choice for Treasury Secretary, you point out the inconsistency with the debt, perhaps, but most felt like, well, that's a conventional pick.
But make no mistake. Every banker, every person on Wall Street that we talked to over the past couple of weeks said this guy will calm the market.
Completely.
So yeah. No, I said what I said only because I'm obsessed with deficits and the debt. And they have a huge decision to make, which I know you'll want to talk about tax cuts and how you pay for those tax cuts, because we learned time and again they don't pay for themselves. But no, the Treasury Secretary, Wall Street, banks, the markets, they're all very happy.
Yeah, and we'll sail through. There's no expectation of any concern there whatsoever. And a number of his picks Friday night were in a blitz. We had like a couple dozen came out in a few hours on Friday. Some of the health choices raised a few eyebrows, but for the most part, conventional picks that were met with some acclaim on both sides of the aisle.
So let's